From 1920 to the present, the life and beliefs of Gertrude Shoemaker reflect American historical themes such as suburbanization, isolationist attitudes, the cult of domesticity, and technological advancements.
Gertrude Sallet was born at home on April 6, 1920, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, to a working-class, Catholic family of five. Her father was a carpenter and a product of the progressive movements of the era, similarly to many other men of the farmlands of the Midwest. Her mother was a dedicated homemaker who taught Gertrude skills like cooking and sewing.
Skills such as cooking and sewing reflect the cult of domesticity, an ideal that portrayed the common depiction of women until the 1960s feminist movements. This belief differentiated between men's and women's roles in society. Men should work away from home. Women, on the other hand, were made by God to raise children and stay in the home while fulfilling certain duties specifically made for them. Women were to hold four specific virtues. Piety. Religion was valued because, unlike intellectual pursuits, it did not take a woman away from her proper sphere, the home, and because it controlled a woman's longings. Purity. Virginity was seen as a woman's greatest treasure, which she had to preserve until her marriage night. Submission. True women were required to be as submissive and obedient as little children because men were regarded as women's superiors by God's appointment.
Domesticity. A woman's proper sphere was the home, where a wife created a refuge for her husband and children. Needlework, cooking, making beds, and tending flowers were considered proper feminine activities, whereas reading of anything other than religious biographies was discouraged.
In 1924, the family moved to Riverside, California, driving thousands of miles across dirt roads in a 1920 Packard coupe.
As the American population increased, Americans became more aware of issues such as urban density and sanitation. So, many Americans, particularly the middle class, began to relocate to what became known as the American suburbs. William Levitt, the famous real estate developer, created tract homes in areas such as New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Long Island, which was famously known as the first suburban area in America. He claimed that he could build a house in 16 minutes. His houses were relatively inexpensive, ranging between $8,000 and $10,000, and as a result, more and more middle-class families began to move to the suburbs. Eventually, under the Eisenhower administration, the Interstate Highway Act was passed, funding the construction of the interstate highway system in America. Although the project was initially intended to move soldiers and nuclear weapons across America as a result of the Cold War, the interstate highway system directly resulted in easier access to areas away from major cities, especially the suburbs.
After settling in Riverside, the family built a house and proceeded to live out the American dream. However, in 1929, the Great Depression hit, causing shockwaves throughout the nation. The Sallet family was forced to get food handouts and lost their first house after Gertrude's father's carpentry business failed. Her father proceeded to become a migrant worker in Yuma, Arizona, picking berries to support the family. After 1939, when the Depression ended, Gertrude decided to attend UCLA and earned a teaching credential with a BA. This went against the ideals of the time towards women who were expected to fall into the conformity of the cult of domesticity. While at UCLA, she recalls the shock on people's faces upon finding out about Pearl Harbor, and she remembers the enrollment at UCLA seemingly dropping overnight as men joined the service and Japanese students were sent to internment camps.
Following Pearl Harbor, America geared up for war. America waged war against Japan while supporting the Allies against the Nazi regime. Similar to World War I, World War II ended shortly after America entered the war. The Japanese forces surrendered after 2 atomic bombs were dropped in major Japanese cities.
After the war, she married Andrew Shoemaker, a Navy veteran just returned from the South Pacific. After getting married, Andrew attended LMU on the GI Bill. The GI Bill was passed by President Truman, providing government money for soldiers returning from war to go to college. They built a home themselves with the help of Gert's brother in El Segundo, California. They had 4 kids, all at a hospital.
This clearly exemplifies the baby boom culture, as couples had more children primarily because of decreased infant mortality rates and technology in hospitals. Gertrude was born at the home, but because of new technology, her children were able to be born in hospital.
As a schoolteacher in 1957, when the Soviets launched Sputnik, she felt that it showed America was lacking in math and science.
Her views also resounded with the federal government, who then proceeded to further fund education in math, science, and NASA.
From post-World War II to 1975, the U.S. engaged in proxy wars throughout the world to fight communism. Gertrude herself was very opposed to foreign conflicts after World War II, and when her eldest son was drafted in 1968 to the Army, she hated the thought of having him fight an unneeded war on foreign soil in Vietnam.
Because Gertrude was born immediately after the end of World War I, she was heavily influenced by American isolationist culture. Following American entry and victory in World War I, the United States did not sign the proposed Treaty of Versailles. The Senate split into three groups that argued over Article X of the treaty. In particular, the Republican Irreconcilable Party and the Reservationist Party totally opposed Wilson and his willingness to accept the treaty and enter the League of Nations. As a result, Americans developed an isolationist attitude towards foreign affairs, particularly European conflicts. For example, the Good Neighbor policy was passed in 1934, preventing the United States from intervening in Latin American affairs. In addition, Congress passed neutrality acts that prevented the sale of weapons to a foreign country and preventing the loaning of money to a foreign country during World War II.
Since the end of the war in Vietnam, Gertrude has been impressed by the rapid rate of technological advancement into the 21st century, such as cell phones or the internet. She's also glad to see that individuals like Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs have preserved America's rugged individualism through their innovations. However, looking to the future, she worries for America's youth as companies ship jobs overseas and we fight foreign wars. Even as she looks to the future, she cannot leave behind her past, as isolationist feelings have continued with her.